This is iDesign Lab, a podcast where creativity and curiosity meet style and design. Curator of interiors, furnishings, and lifestyles. Hosted by Tiffany Woolley, an interior designer and a style enthusiast, along with her serial entrepreneur husband, Scott. iDesign Lab is your ultimate design podcast, where we explore the rich and vibrant world of design and its constant evolution in style and trends. iDesign Lab provides industry insight, discussing the latest trends, styles, and everything in between to better help you style your life through advice from trendsetters, designers, influencers, innovators, fabricators, and manufacturers, as well as personal stories that inspire, motivate, and excite. And join us on this elevated, informative, and lively journey into the world of all things design. Hey everyone, today we're joined by Jacob Codner, managing partner of Market Auctions, Inc. Jacob is a fourth-generation auctioneer, a GIA graduate gemologist, and honestly, one of Florida's youngest licensed auctioneers. With decades of experience and, an eye for rare finds, Jacob brings deep expertise in fine art, antiques, and estate acquisitions. He co-founded Market Auctions alongside the Palm Beach Show Group.
Welcome to the iDesign Lab podcast. Today we have Jacob Codner with us, who has a really interesting story that I'm excited to dive into. A multi-generational auctioneer, but more importantly, jewelry and fine art. So I'm excited to dive into your story. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
So you're multi-generation. So is it third or fourth generation that your family?
I am a third generation auctioneer, but fourth generation art and antique dealer.
What's the difference between the two?
You could be an art and antique dealer and have a gallery setting versus an auction gallery, where I always say it's a lot like a traveling circus. You set up the auction, you bring all the items, make sure they're all showroom ready, you offer them for sale. Once that auction ends, the items are removed, and then you start the next one. Where a gallery, you have stage presence and you have exhibitions, and things kind of sit till they're sold, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's a higher volume.
Like a store?
Like a store,
Storefront.
exactly.
Okay.
But the auctions have a large storefront too, but it's much more product in, much more product out.
And in there, it looks like there's an end game to it as well, right? With auctioning?
Yeah, there's a lot of times you can get great value on things at auction. Some stores and galleries will buy at auction as well. So it offers a good segment in the estate world for art, antiques, decorative arts, jewelry as well. So yeah, it's a cool business.
So where does all this stuff come from that you're auctioning? You said estates. Mm-hmm. Is it all estates? So someone passes away, a family contacts you. How does that?
A little bit of everything. We have dealers that may have older product that they don't know what to do with, so they contract us to come in and represent their pieces. We work with a lot of people that can be going through financial distress. It could be divorce. It could be inheritance. It could be relocation. It could be downsizing their property. It could be husband and wife redecorating, which is how I met you. And you were very helpful in navigating through the dynamic between me and my wife and our taste, which we'll talk about later.
Collection.
So we come across things a lot of different ways. And our other business is a 6-store jewelry chain that deals in trades. So a lot of people will come in wanting to trade items that maybe the jewelry stores don't have the best market for. Those also end up in auction as well. So there's a lot of different outlets on how we come across the product that we represent.
So let's go back to the beginning and tell us how you landed here. And did you always know, even though it was a family tree business a little bit, did you know for sure this is what you wanted to do?
It was always a front runner. So,
So growing up as a kid,
I would be going to my father's auction house, working on the weekends, holding a little collectible and, walking up to someone who's bidding saying, "What do you think about this? This is beautiful. This would look great on whatever property, whatever shelf you have to put it on." And from there, it just grew and grew and grew. And when I was actually in high school, I got my auction license.
So cool.
you have to have a license to auction.
You do. You have to be a licensed auctioneer with the state of Florida, similar to a real estate professional or any other trade regulated thing.
Why do you need to have a license to auction?
So it's not just taking an item and offering it
for
for
sale.
X, Y, whatever it is. If there's a property, you need to make sure that you have right of title. Things can if you're dealing in livestock, which I actually had to learn, which is funny because I'm like, this guy selling, 19th century paintings. I have to learn how to quarantine a cow if there's ever an issue. And they literally put you through all that. Cars, vehicles, titles, bills of sale. You need to learn about insurances, if there is refunds. Most contracts at auction are as is, where is, unless specified, doing proper due diligence. So there's a lot that goes into it. It really is.
The chain of custody of items, too, I'm
and
sure.
When you're dealing with estates, and it could be inheritance, things can get messy if, things are not properly allocated to the person that has the right to represent them.
Right.
So there is a lot of due diligence that takes place.
So by the time you got to your teens or graduating from high school, did you know that you were kind of designing your life to go and become an auctioneer?
So I knew I was designing my life to be in the auction and antique business. I did become a jeweler and a gemologist, which at the time I didn't know, which that's a funny story how I became a gemologist and mineralogist. But
well, tell us.
At the time, I was 18 years old and going to local auction houses saying, hey, I'm a licensed auctioneer. Do you guys need a mouthpiece to do an auction? Let's do an auction. And they said, sure. And I, make a few $100 for the night. and I gained expertise. What was cool, though, is I started buying my own stuff and seeding the auctions that I was representing. And I'll never forget, I was 18 and change that summer right out of high school. Someone calls me and goes, hey, I want to sell a bunch of things. And I go, and they pulled out a bunch of jewelry. And I said, I have no clue what this is. But I had a friend who was a jeweler. So I brought him on, and he spent more. I think his margin was more, and he put everything in his pocket.
And you were like,
where
wow.
I had a box truck, and I was sweating, and I had my buddies. We were loading a truck to make a few dollars, where he took an item that had the same margin and put it in his pocket. At that point, I became a gemologist. I said, this is very interesting.
You start to realize.
Mm-hmm. So that all ties with each other, and it's full.
Selling smaller things you found to be a little bit easier.
Yeah, but
Precious
again,
gems.
Do you still sell furniture or?
Sure. Now, we won't do just general household goods.
Right.
If it's the couch that was, just used and there's nothing really to it, then no, everything we deal in is either high luxury or designer or a listed prominent artist or has some type of importance.
Right.
It's not just cleaning out a house with pots and pans and
Right.
things like that. Which,
You're not a...
people call us, and that has been, something we've done. Take the good, the bad, the ugly. Huh. We want you to deal with everything. So we do offer that, but we do specialize in more blue chip related stuff.
So you have to have a pretty good knowledge of a
what
lot
you're
of
looking
different
at.
things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a watch a couple of years ago I didn't want. Tiffany knew someone. I went to him and sold it to him.
Sure.
And, there's so many different watches. We're watching a television
I know,
show
it was gonna
right
tell
now
you
called,
should
what's it,
watch.
with John Hamm?
Oh, Friends and Neighbors.
It's
Yes.
so
And
good.
I love it when they talk about the Patek and the
Yes.
Richard Mille, the Hermes. I'm
I
like,
know.
wow, this is pretty crazy.
Right.
And
Right,
true.
as he's
Yeah.
stealing these items,
Yeah.
they're giving you a whole
Yep.
chart on the cost of the value.
Yeah.
And from wine to art,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's so extensive.
Yeah. The Liechtenstein in that show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great show.
It's
That was a cool show.
It's a good show.
Yeah.
We're still a little through it, but
Yeah.
where do you see the value when you're walking through these, and when you get that phone call and you're walking through an estate or whatever you're going to visit? Where do you hone in on value? Like items, or is it the historical, or is it the name?
It's a combination of everything. I mean, even when we're researching paintings, we have to go by the dimensions of the piece. We have to go by the subject matter of the piece, the condition of the piece. Was this artist recognized with this genre? Is this a genre work? If the artist was known for landscapes and this is a picture of a car, is that going to be a desirable subject for that artist? Maybe not. But in the art world, I always say if you like the piece first, everything else doesn't matter. I really, truly believe in what you buy.
You have to love it.
You have to love it. And if you make some money in the end with an investment, great. And if you don't, it's the cost of enjoying it.
But when you're auctioning things or you're valuing things, can you have losses?
Sure.
So if you value it incorrectly, or?
Well, I mean, at auction, it's our job to really deliver you the floor. Okay. So
Okay.
if we believe an item is going to sell for $5,000 to $6,000, we would offer it at auction below that low estimate for one, to create interest in it and protect the interest of the piece by being where we should. If you have an item that's worth 5 to 6, you won't start it at above estimate because now it's not going to sell for 1. And 2, our buyers, our clientele, they really like artwork that's fresh to market. It's kind of like a real estate listing that's been lingering too long. And if you have a piece that goes up for auction and fails to sell, it doesn't necessarily hurt. It doesn't help the value, rather, of the piece. It's an item that failed to sell, so now it's worth less. So, but there's losses depending on how you bought it. If you bought an item at the peak of the market, like anything in business, it's only worth what someone's willing to pay at that time. A lot of the artwork that we do come across, though, is family, generational, heirloom. So it is a money maker, I guess is the right word. But again, when we're dealing with people that need to liquidate things, it depends how they bought them. If you're buying an item at the height of the market and that is no longer the in vogue piece, the market is what it is. So yeah, people take losses.
It seems like it's a very unique business from a standpoint, like I think of retail. And you have a store, I had grocery stores. So the flow of people coming in, we always had something to sell.
Sure.
But when what you're doing, do you have like dry spells where no one's reached out to you? Or
well, I always say the auction business is good as what you have in the next auction.
Right.
So,
but is it hard to find?
Our market here in South Florida is on fire, and it has
Really?
been since COVID. I mean, we're backlogged several auctions at any given time, and we sell over 1,000 items a month. And that's just the auction business. And as I mentioned, we actually have an art gallery. We have a jewelry store chain. We have other businesses as well that are not just the once a month, twice a month auction. These are the retail stores similar to the grocery.
So when you're doing an auction, do you have an auction like building or room?
Yeah, we do. So we have a 20,000 square foot building in Lake Worth. And we do in-person live sales about 2 per year. We'll do a preseason and a postseason auction, Kickstart to Palm Beach.
Where an audience or people can go.
People can come.
Because that's what I think
it's on preview.
It's on preview, exhibition, and I kind of like to market it as like a date night at the auction. We have it catered. You get dressed up a little bit. It's fun. We have drinks. And it's just an interactive thing that I feel my generation and a lot of people don't appreciate like they once did. So you come to the auction. You meet some friends. It's a social thing. You have some drinks, and maybe you leave with an item. It's really fun.
So how many people typically will attend something like that?
So we will have auctions that can have as little as 30, 40 people, and then we've had them with several hundred standing.
I was going to say, that's not bad.
Standing room only with several hundred. But every auction we do is also simultaneously offered online. So we can have at any given time thousands of people watching and bidding, and majority of the items with the advent of the internet and post-COVID, the way that business model shifted, do actually sell online. We ship all over the world. So
it must be an interesting marketing, how you have to market to reach out to people to be aware.
Yeah.
I see every so often, like maybe it was like 2 years ago, I don't remember where I saw it, but like Elton John put a whole bunch
sunglasses.
of up for auction.
Yeah.
And there was I remember we looked at it like 2 years ago. There was a whole bunch of like Elvis stuff. We're just curious, like what are they auctioning off of Elvis stuff?
Yeah.
We have a really good friend who had, I don't think he has it anymore because I think he auctioned it all off. He had like one of the largest pop culture collections of stuff in the world. Anthony Puglisi.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with
I'm not, but
Anthony.
I see the pop auctions that come up, and that's a great market.
So
it is.
Your niche is fine art, or
we'll deal in anything from 19th century to contemporary.
Okay.
So in contemporary 60s, 70s, but we do offer, so our art gallery, Provident Fine Art as well, recently signed Sylvester Stallone actually as an artist, which you may have saw on my Instagram.
Yes.
So, he's an artist that's still actively painting and doing things.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Actively?
He always has been.
Wow. Not a lot of pieces, but he is.
But which is kind of better, really,
totally,
right?
Yep. And he moved to Palm Beach not long ago, and it's
great
been
partnership.
Totally.
Well, he does sculptures too.
We haven't seen any of his sculptures yet, but he is dealing. We're dealing in his artwork, his paintings, and they've been really cool. been really
So you've
good
been
for us.
auctioning them and selling
Not
them?
auctioning. This has been at our Provident Fine Art location in Palm Beach. And our art partner there, Sean David, he's actually a third-generation art dealer. He's the one spearheading working with that and representing him as a client. So it's been very, very cool.
I love how you guys have all cross-collaborated and built something that's more sustainable, I feel like, too.
Yeah. Well, it stemmed back to, I guess, Provident Jewelry, which is the 6-store chain that we have here in town in Florida. They've been in business for over 30-something years as estate buyers and sellers and also brand representatives for, Breitling, Chopard, Cartier, and tons of different, high-end brands. And I think there's about 13,000 products, SKUs in the company right now, ranging from a couple $100 items to multiple 7-figure diamonds. I mean, it's a pretty extensive business. But with that and catering to all of our clients is where the auction house was built and where the Provident Fine Art was built and then Provident Realty was built. So we have built all of that based upon the 6-store jewelry chain, which I think is the heart of the whole operation.
Well, and they all do work hand in hand together. I mean, people who appreciate good things, want to continue to learn, which is why I love what you said, that for our generation, you're younger than me, but for this newer generation to really have people go back and really start to appreciate history and, the detail behind.
Totally.
Yeah. I think it would be a fun night out going to an auction.
It's a blast.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, we'll have one this coming season. You guys will come.
Yeah. Well,
So you only do
fun.
it twice a year.
For now, prior to COVID, every auction we did was in person. And then
you
that
went
fizzled
to
out,
resources.
and we actually switched the model to fully online. And then now,
Is it engaging when it's online? Do you get the activity that?
Oh, we do. We get
do?
tons of activity. But
I
also,
even
just because
surf
it's
it.
online, you have exhibition that day. People can come, they could look at the items, touch the items if they want. We do FaceTime consultations to show them the items. So you can still be involved even not being there. People will come for that exhibition and say, call me on lot 17, and we call them, or someone from the team calls them. But, I've been, like I said, an auctioneer since 2008. I enjoy auctioning. I like being up there and having fun with people and, having the wife nudge the husband, stop bidding. And then the other guy saying, oh, are you going to bid? And then it becomes a thing.
So you have to learn to read a crowd that way, too. So it's really
It's fun.
it is fun.
So you're actually the auctioneer
That's
doing.
like a
10, 25, looking for 30, now 35, now 50, 75, 100, 100, quarter, 100, half, 175, now 2. 250 to Miss Tiffany.
And I'll tell you
Where
that
at?
there's so many charity events that we've gone to,
Sure.
and almost everyone there's an auction.
Yeah. I
And
did one
it's-
last week in Miami.
You
Yeah,
did?
the
That's
Greater
awesome.
Junior Achievement of Miami Beach last Monday
But
night.
most
at,
of the
Country
places,
Club.
I think they miss the boat when they do it because the person they have doing the auction
Isn't engaging enough.
isn't entertaining, and you don't feel as though it's an auction.
But it's a harder thing because, again, when I grew up, I would go to Dad and Grandpa's auction, and it would be filled. And then as I got older, the crowd started diminishing. And even if you go to some of the major New York houses, the crowds aren't there like they once were.
Right.
But that's not just the auction losing stigma.
No.
It's the model today where everyone's buying online, and you can look at the auctions online. You can get the condition reports online. But we've really tried to, I guess, parlay it back into a classy night out, have fun, come to the auction, buy some stuff.
It's educational too.
Very.
So I feel like it, you learn and you start to research an item. What is your most sought after items? I mean, I think what I find interesting obviously is jewelry. But is it more art or is it really just across the board?
It's across the board. And our auctions, we'll do a couple throughout the year that are curated to one thing. We can have a silver auction. We actually had a big Palm Beach book auction. Probably, insane books. I mean, original
like
first
what
edition.
kind of books?
We had,
Amazing.
we had, let's see, Winston Churchill books. We had original, dictionaries. We had Old Man in the Sea. We had really cool names and things like that. It was really cool. And I think there was about 600 lots, and it was a 2-part auction. But things like that, and you look at these, and some of them still had the original receipts. They brought
That's crazy.
not tons for what they really were, and just even for decor.
It's so
to buy
true.
a true antiquity, a true book, it was a value. It was amazing. So that was a cool cool auction for us. But majority of our auctions are multiple things. Jewelry, silver, artwork, porcelains.
And do people leave with the item right then and there?
If they want to, they can. Yeah, if it's a live sale, then yes, they can. Online, the invoices go out the next morning, and we coordinate shipping, or they can come pick it up.
What about memorabilia?
So memorabilia, we do a lot of private sales for memorabilia.
What do you mean by private sales?
So let's say someone called me and said, I have a autographed, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. We'd rather it not go at auction, because in the event it doesn't sell, I don't want it to have that burned, have it online. So we have private clients that buy a lot of things. And memorabilia is kind of one of those that, rather than auctioning it, because truthfully, our auctions, we don't deal in a lot of public memorabilia. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of private clients that buy that stuff. So
interesting.
So it depends. Again, to go back to what you said about just product and what do we specialize in, it depends on the item. We always act in best use and highest price. So if we know that a private sale will yield the client the most value, we'll go that route. If we think the auction's the best route, we'll go that route. If we think it's an item for provident fine art, we'll put it on consignment there. If we think it's a diamond that we immediately have a client for, we'll buy it outright and put it in our jewelry store. So, these several businesses do work with one another to achieve the highest value for the product, which is pretty cool.
That is so cool. And I know recently you had a very cool, I don't know, how do you call it, a commission, or when you had the wrapper and all that?
So we were contracted by the IRS to do the artist Tekashi 6ix9ine, Daniel Hernandez, his confiscated jewelry and albums and handbags, and that was a sale for the books. That was
it was just so fascinating.
It was very cool.
What do you mean? What
it
was
just, to me, obviously it's such a pop culture situation,
Totally.
But it was also fine art. I mean, it was the best of everything. I mean,
what was interesting about that is I have not really listened to rap music.
Right.
I didn't know about it. So when my rep at the IRS, who we've done business with, calls me and mentions it, I said, I got to do a little homework. I don't know what this is really. But he shows me the pictures, and I did one Google search, and I see one of his videos that's been seen by 1.5 billion people, and he's wearing one of the pendants that I'm having the opportunity to sell. I knew it'd be a no-brainer. So we took 63 lots, 63 items, which 59 out of the 63 sold. The other ones did sell, but unfortunately they didn't get paid for. But doesn't matter.
What does that mean?
Some people sometimes will just get caught up, buy an item, and decide not to pay, which it does happen.
Really?
Yeah, but we hold the items till we're paid, so it's okay. We'll typically go to the underbidder, but in any event, still 59 out of 63 is a very big sell-through rate. We had over 3,000 registered bidders, and out of those 3,000 bidders, almost all of them were first-time bidders at auction.
So it
Therefore,
really brought
fans, professionals, entertainers, people that just seen his videos and want to own a piece. People
I never even heard of the guy.
Well, you're not of the genre.
Yeah, I mean, it was a diamond encrusted shark, the size of a.
It's funny because Scott does some work with an urban comedian that they produce, and I showed it to her immediately because I thought she might be interested in some of the pieces. And you know what she said to me? She's like, were all the diamonds real? And I was like, I have to ask you that. Because she was like, I bet they're not all real.
So she's right. Now, I will say this. So again, I'm a gemologist. Our team, we have several gemologists, and through Provident Jewelry, every store has several gemologists. So every single diamond on every single piece was hand counted. And one of the items had over 7,000 stones that one of our sales associates had to sit there and count. We wanted to make sure, is everything natural? Is it synthetic? If it is synthetic, if it is natural, are they irradiated? Are they fully natural? Are they treated in some capacity? So we did have a lot of things that were natural. We did have some things that were synthetic, and then we had some pieces that were majority natural that may have had repairs over the years with synthetic, and all of this was disclosed. We used X-ray analysis for the stones. We had to do precious metal analyzing for the metals to see is it truly 14, 18, 10, whatever it is. But the sale itself was bananas. It was like literally crazy to have over 3,000 bidders and first-time bidders. We actually had to bring over support staff from the other companies to physically call every single bidder, 3,000 phone calls.
Phone calls.
Yep. And I joke because I have a video of the auction floor, and all of our salespeople, that are at the jewelry stores, more refined, dressed nice, and everyone's working the phones. It reminded me like a boiler room and selling penny stocks or whatever. It was
There's
really
a lot
funny.
of work that's going on behind the scenes.
I was
it's not
gonna-
as
I was
simple
a-
as you.
Tons.
I wanted to ask about the
and that
team,
specific
but-
sale, we were on Yahoo, we were on Newsweek, we were TMZ, Business Insider, local news, national news. I mean, that got picked up and went completely viral all over the world. We were on, Dominican Republic. We were on a bunch of talk shows. I mean, it was insane for business.
How fun.
Meanwhile, we're behind the scenes trying to monitor these phone calls and saying, okay, if you're bidding on this, you have to be transferred over to the high level department. We had to get proof of funds, and it was a lot.
What was the most expensive item that went? Was it the shark?
Was it the shark? I think it was the shark, and that was like $60-some-odd thousand. But the sleeper was actually the plaques, the albums. Those were all estimated $3,000 to $4,000, $3,000 to $5,000, and there was I forgot how many. I think over a dozen of them, $20,000, $25,000. I mean, They just went crazy. Yeah.
On the platinum and gold albums?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do you value that?
Well,
Bringing in
that's
your
one of the
team.
things with the auctions. If it's a harder item to value, you let the market really dictate what it is. You just strap yourself in and you're all along for the ride. But initially to value it with those estimates, we use other wrap items that may have gone through the secondary market, and we try to comp them out and then just be a little more conservative than that. But none of us expected those to achieve what they did. The jewelry items, you can figure out carat weight, you can figure out labor, you can figure out metal. It's more of a quantifiable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the albums, like I keep saying, was really the educational thing for us and the sleeper of the sale, which was pretty cool. Yeah, there was many six figures in just those.
Did he himself vote on anything back? Or, I mean...
Couldn't say, but couldn't say. But it was interesting. We made a lot of new clients that we may have not got. I mean, athletes, other entertainers. I mean, it's pretty cool. One of my sales guys at the auction house is now texting an NBA guy like they're best friends, and I'm like, that is crazy. That's awesome.
Fun.
So it was a pretty cool pivotal moment for us. It was
So
neat.
how does something like that come to your auction house?
So the auction house, Market Auctions, does business with the IRS, and the jewelry store, Provident Jewelry, does business with the IRS. This sale came to Provident Jewelry from an appraisal standpoint. They wanted everything appraised for fair market. And the rep knows us because we not only appraise, but our other business sells. And they're not divided, which is good, so you can offer both of those. So once the items were appraised, he and I just started discussing us representing selling them. And that's how that ended up coming to light.
And what was the time frame?
By the time we took possession to the time we actually had the sale, and it was probably about a 5 to 6 month turnaround, which is relatively quick
Right.
when working on
I
a
would
deal
think
like
so.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a...
But it was one for the books, because I remember when they delivered the things, I took possession at one of our jewelry stores, and that's where we started analyzing everything. And there must have been 20 IRS agents in vests and firearms dropping this off. And I'm like, what is going on?
Like a Brinks truck, literally. Yeah.
Totally. They had an armored security. They had all of these people. And I'm like, it looks like we're getting like robbed or something just happened.
Raid's happening.
Raid, exactly. And I'm like, this is bananas. This is crazy. And then it was funny, but it was pretty crazy. It was a cool auction.
So how often does like the IRS call you with something like that?
We do a few a year that are larger like that. We do appraisal work for them pretty regularly. Just because the IRS asks us to do appraisal work doesn't mean that item will eventually be sold. It can still go back to the owner and whatnot.
That seems like a good client to have, getting repeat business.
Sure.
But what other clients do you have from a repeat business standpoint? Is it brokers, real estate brokers who are selling in the state, or
on the auction
lawyers?
side, we deal with a lot of estate attorneys. We deal with a lot of real estate brokers, real estate associates that are in and out of homes.
So are you marketing to them? Are you reaching out to them,
Yeah.
reminding them, putting you
We're
back
marketing to them, but also as momentum grows, people realize that we can be a one-stop shop.
Right.
If you're a real estate agent and you go into a home, someone's lived there for X amount of decades, and it's loaded to the brim with antiques or contents, we should say.
Right.
That real estate agent may have a difficult time, one, emptying the house, helping that person, and the people are sometimes attached to their pieces. Well, maybe I don't want to sell my property because what am I going to do with all this stuff? We're just another facet to help them sell that product, to sell that home, and also along the way we help the client and we help ourselves. It's a
win-win.
It's a win-win. Yeah.
It is such a hand-holding, personal.
It has to be.
Business too.
So it's been a family business for how many years? How many decades?
My grandfather came from Russia in 1905 to Illinois, and then he opened an antique store, which that was my great-grandfather, I'm sorry. And then my grandfather opened up an auction gallery in Chicago, and the address was 5100 Foster, which was an old nightclub where Danny Thomas and all these old guys started off at, which is pretty cool. And then my father and his two brothers moved down to Surfside in the 80s, and that's where they opened up their stores. And
really?
Then I left in 2008, opened up my own business, which in 2015 kind of joined in with Provident Jewelry to launch this non-jewelry related division.
Right.
And in the 10 years I've been there, we've done the auction business. We've spearheaded Provident Fine Art. We've done a lot of cool things outside of just the brick and mortar jewelry model that's been so successful for so long.
Because you don't see too many, at least I do, in South Florida, auction houses or, I mean, there's jewelry stores, but...
You know, the auction houses, they're out there, but they don't have the, hey, look at me effect as a jewelry store does. A lot of them could be in industrial plazas today. And that, like I mentioned, the model of people coming and going into an auction is not like it once was. So we've been working hard to really make that, make that model sexy again, if it makes sense. So.
And how do you go about curating the actual catalog for the auction?
Well, we have a good gallery director in place.
You do.
Yeah, we have gallery director. We have a team of specialists, and we won't put items in just to put them in. There's always a method to the madness of
process.
Yeah, we'll know that this auction is more art heavy, and we'll focus on better quality art. Or, we're curating the sales. We are curating them.
It's just so crazy, interesting.
Yeah.
So, are there other aspects of the business that, how am I best trying to say it? Other items or things that you'd like to be selling or auctioning but are more difficult that might have a greater value but are very limited? And
we're always looking into the what's next. And, we mentioned friends and neighbors earlier about the Hermes Birkin being a staple.
Correct.
So, there's other auction houses, major firms that have curated luxury designer handbag sales. Well, they'll have Chanel's and Birkins and all the things that follow suit. So we are trying to get more into that, doing those type of just, luxury designer good sales. And we have pieces almost in every sale, at least something like that, but more of a curated specialty auction for that is really what we've been focusing on now. It's an always evolving and ever-changing thing because trends change. And people, I mean, you of all people know that. So
totally.
So.
And how do you see with these trends changing? I mean, the one thing that's like we're talking about the bags and everything. For me, with social media, it's just become like a staple that you have to have these certain items to like evolve yourself. And people like my kids, for example, as teenagers, know about these items that I'm like, how do you even know about them at such a young age? How do you see, and obviously forgeries and like how much of it is actually real and not real? And does that affect what you guys are doing?
So that's a very good point. And unfortunately, since the beginning of time, if something has value, there's been a forgery that follows it.
Correct.
Whether it's a diamond, a ruby, an emerald, a sapphire, a Cartier love bracelet, a Van Cleef Alhambra, that's just how it is. And unfortunately, as time's progressed, it becomes harder and harder to verify that stuff. Now, we have resources through our other channels to verify it. Again, our jewelry company carries Cartier. We happen to have someone in our jewelry company that managed the Van Cleef flagship store in New York. He's on our staff. So, I mean, that's the almost the end-all, be-all. But, I mean, there's things coming out of overseas that have fake paperwork, fake boxes, fake invoices.
I know.
It's very difficult. And, you know, if you buy from a reputable place, they stand behind it. And honestly, no one's perfect. I've had some of my closest friends buy things in good faith, sell them in good faith, only to realize later on that they could be a replica. We are extremely cautious of anything we sell signed, and we stand behind it. You have to be. But, you know, you look in the newspapers, Port of Palm Beach, Port of Miami, confiscated $20 million in Louis Vuitton bags and Cartier. It's like South Florida is Florida is like a mecca for counterfeit stuff, and it's bad. It is a bad thing. But I would just say you have to buy it from a reputable place. You know, people buy things on eBay or online. Wow, look at this Cartier love bracelet. That's like one of the most knocked off thing. And wow, it's a good deal. Well, there's not really a good deal on a Cartier love bracelet because they're so desirable. If you see one that's a good deal, it's, you know, it's questionable.
Well, that's why I love what you're doing about trying to make the auction more of like a date experience and really like it's almost part of educating your consumer and this next generation about the value of these items and the importance that value holds and may it maintain it. Exactly. I mean, I've always been of the mindset, like if you can't afford it, you don't want the copy. I mean, I try to like explain that to my kids too, as
I agree
you know,
with
you
that.
go to the mall and there's these pop-up shops of, you know, little knockoff bags and this and that. I'm like, it's better to create your own style and evolve with what you can.
Yeah. And I think that also does correspond with market because a lot of people buy synthetic diamonds today too. So, you know, one can argue is that it's a diamond, but it's man-made versus it being natural. And then one can argue, okay, is this love bracelet that has the same exact spec, weight, dimensions, layout the same as natural? I disagree with all of that, but that's just my opinion for whatever it's worth. So like you said, there's always a retained value in buying what's true. And you want to pass something along to the family. You want to buy something that you know is another vessel for something that's not going to lose money. You got to buy the real stuff. But that's
where the value is.
That's where the value is. That's my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you go and see all of these beautiful things and, you know, do all this research? And I mean, I somewhat get attached to these. Like, how do you not want to have everything in your own personal collection?
Well, before I answer
Let
that,
it
I'm
go.
going to mention to the podcast how I met you. My wife and I were renovating a home, and you helped navigate through our completely different tastes. And it's funny because during our 1-year renovation with each other, I would text you pictures. Tiffany, look what I just bought. I'm putting it in storage. And Madison's like, yuck. And I was like, well, check this out, Tiffany. What about this? Would this go there? And Madison's like, ew.
We got a few snuck through.
Your wife's saying this.
Oh, yeah. No, Tiffany was like
a
mediator for a year. She's not just an amazing interior designer. She's a therapist. So it was funny because when I come across things, I do fall in love with them.
And you have a good eye, right?
Any antique dealer or someone that's a historian, it's hard for them not to be a collector too.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it is hard. And I still to this day have a storage unit, and I have pallets of stuff at my warehouse that's just mine. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I sometimes still text you. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
But you were awesome in helping navigate. Hey, this would look good. And one of my paintings that we built the light for. Luckily, Madison likes that one. But I actually enjoyed that process, like kind of annoying my wife a little bit through the whole project. Pretty fun. That was pretty fun.
Well, and as people like young clients, which I love having, that you actually did have these pieces that have such history and also such high style, that to me, that's what makes houses timeless, are the integration of these pieces that have such historical meaning. And I mean, that's kind of like, our house is kind of a bit of that too. I mean, it's stuck in the age of what we decorated it, but what keeps it like still like home and people, come in and appreciate it is because we have all this other random stuff that I've brought in and collected.
Filled with stuff we've collected along through our life.
Yeah, of course. But they're memories.
Yeah.
Correct.
They're sentimental.
Like every piece of art in our house, there's a story behind it.
Sure.
It's not like when Tiffany decorates a house, like she was just doing a house and she bought, I don't know, 20 paintings for the house. And I'm like, they're buying just paintings that you just showed them?
Yeah.
It's like, I can't comprehend that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's going to make their house beautiful. It's going to finish their house.
Yeah.
I said, well, I couldn't do that. Everything that's on the wall has a story.
Yeah,
because
you were involved in everything.
we got that when we were there, and we were,
Sure.
when we were in Bali. We got that,
Which I
I'm
love.
like that too, though.
But that's why I
there's a
love
story
that
and a
you
history that
want to insert this. I feel like we need to actually do some more discussions about this because, it is amazing to have clients who come in who are almost 50 years old and have nothing.
Yeah.
Like, not that things define you
Yeah.
or are that important, but they do tell a story.
Sure.
she's doing a house right now, and I was in recently, and I came back to the office, and I was chatting with the client, and he's, I don't know, 48, 49. I said, Tiffany, he has like 2 bins.
Literally.
I said to him, I said, you have all your stuff in storage. You must be like excited to get it into the house because the house is ready. He's like, everything's here. And I said, you have nothing in the house.
Yeah.
I said, because the furniture hadn't been delivered yet. And he's like, come with me. And he's like, he takes me into his closet. And he goes, this is everything I have in life. It's right here.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, like, how do you go through 47 or 48 years and you don't have anything? Nothing?
Yeah.
Like nothing.
I think also, like we talked about earlier with the auction market and trends, it's a minimalistic world too.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going super contemporary, it's super modern, where there's not a lot of stuff in their
in the
house.
No,
Correct.
it's true.
And again, to each his own, but I grew up where like anything in my house I couldn't touch as a child.
Right, same.
Like look at all these porcelain figures. Well, don't touch them. Well, Mom, I'm going to warm up something in the microwave. Well, don't use that china. It's like, well, what is all this stuff? Like, what is all of this?
So I grew
God,
up with
that's
aunts and
hysterical.
uncles that there was rooms in the house. When
Couldn't
you
go in.
would go
Me
I'd go to
too.
my aunt and uncle's house.
Yeah.
My parents would say, do not go in the living room and the dining room whatsoever at all.
Yeah.
So
You're
true.
not allowed in those
Yeah.
rooms. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Well, I
It's-
feel like it's our job to create a balance between that.
And you did that
you
perfectly
know,
with
and
Madison
I
and
feel like we owe it to like the next generation to really start,
Yeah.
seeding those seeds.
So your business, to keep it growing and going, you've got to continually be finding stuff,
Yeah.
bringing stuff in. So do you typically look for big collections, or if someone walked in and said, I got these 3 items that I'd like to,
We do both.
you take in,
We do both.
because I hate to use this word or say this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have
Is that
some things you want to get rid of?
No, it reminds me of like 1 or 2 things, like going to a pawn shop.
Yeah.
Where you're basically going to a counter saying in the haggling
What's
back.
this worth? They'll bring in the expert and,
So
do
has
that,
there been any, there's been a lot of successful television programs about
The Antique Roadshow.
the pawn, those kind of thing. Has there been anything with auctions, like big auctions?
So years
and I think of
ago-
auctions like, you watch a movie like, what's the movie you love with Pierce Brosnan?
Thomas Crown Affair.
Thomas
Yes,
Crown
Thomas
Affair.
Crown.
Oh, that's
Oh,
a
it's the
famous
best.
painting. The man with that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I watched that as a kid, and I was like
Such a good
enamored by
movie.
it.
I
Yeah,
know.
great movie.
that's what I think
The
of as an
sexiness
auction.
of it.
Totally. And that's, you know what? And that's how auctions were at one point. There was a sexy edge to it. And I feel like that's kind of calmed a little bit with everyone buying online. And that's what we're trying to bring back. But to answer your question, with a show, years ago, there was a show based out of Atlanta. And it was kind of more of a, he had a pretty big business. And I actually knew his father that owned that auction house, which is funny because he's older than me, but I knew his father. And it was just a funny thing. But successful auction house. There hasn't really been a show like that. We've tried over the years to do something like that and find a show like that. But like I mentioned to Tiffany, some of our clients do like to be confidential. Now, can we have a show of us
Right.
like American Pickers in the van going from one house to the other?
Yeah.
Totally. And I think that'd be an amazing thing for the business, and not only the business, but for people to essentially understand the value of antiquities and understanding that if you know where to look, okay, maybe you can go to a local furniture store and buy a brand new couch. It's going to cost you 5, 6, 10, 15 grand, or you can buy a ruffled leather piece if it's for a man cave for $1,000 pre-owned in good shape. So it's nice to know what you can bring back. And actually, I will say, when we were doing our furniture for our house, if you remember, Tiffany, that was hard for me to swallow that pill, because I'm like, man, I've seen antiquities that I like a little better, maybe whatever, but everything we picked out was great, and it was a perfect tribute to both Madison and I. But I was like, oh man, that was a harder one for me.
Yeah.
But it turned out great. Everything turned out perfect mixture. So, but yeah, it'd be cool to do a show one day, and I think it's.
But are there any that like that?
Not active that I know of.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
No, there's a show on Netflix. I forgot what it was called, but they deal in more like collectibles. They'll do, Pokemon cards and memorabilia and things like that.
There's so much with the cards and everything too.
Yeah.
So going back to this TV show, I guess, because it's first in my head. So everything has these serial numbers today, and everything is so trackable. As you're, doing your auctions and you're bringing these items in, do they start getting a history and become trackable?
Well, it depends on the item. If we're going back talking about Van Cleef and Cartier, those replicated pieces can have true serial numbers, because you can go to the Cartier store, buy something, copy it, and return it. That's what counterfeiters can do. Not to scare anybody, obviously. But there's not really a database to track a lot of things like that now. There is.
So would be so cool.
For serial numbers, yeah, but a lot of stuff remains confidential. A lot of this still happens behind scenes, not in the public's eye. But for artwork, let's use an artist of Liechtenstein. If I wanted to see where this painting's been in the past 40 years, there's databases to type in that artist's name, the dimensions, maybe if that piece is titled, I can find that, okay, it went through Sotheby's in 87, it went through Christie's in 92, and those listings that they have on that database will show private collection in between this and that. But, I mean, my job typically is when I go into someone's house, a lot of the stuff could be heirlooms, and it's never seen the public's eye. So we've actually dealt in lost artwork. By lost artwork, this is the missing painting that no one's known about for 150 years, and it's our job to also go through the lost art registry, make sure it was not a stolen piece from overseas.
Right.
Get our, we have an advisory council that goes through making sure there's no claims, doing our own homework, and then bring it to market. So it's a tough thing to track, but serial numbers and diamonds that have GIA certificate numbers, things like that you can track in the event that they were ever stolen, and they show up in the public's eye. But yeah.
And then, how do they get resold? On this show, once it's stolen, there's a market for that? That's TV.
Yeah, it's TV, and whenever I've even watched.
Well, in the show, they're going to a pawn shop.
Oh, I
to a
know.
person and that person's selling it to someone who's a private.
Yeah.
It's like paintings. There's a lot of famous. There was the Boston, the art.
Isabella Gardner, Stuart Gardner.
disappeared, and they're probably sitting in a couple of collectors' homes that no one knows about.
Yeah, and you think about artwork though, and I always say art and antiquities is a little different than jewelry, because going back to auction estimates, which we talked about earlier, how do you develop a market value? And I like to be a little bit more on the conservative side, because if an item doesn't sell, I can't turn it into something else, okay? If it's a necklace that we try to sell 2, 3, 4 times, it doesn't sell, okay, maybe we just pull the stones out of it, we melt the gold, and we make something else out of it. There's always a pivot. So, with the art world, you have to approach it from a very smart marketing strategy, because you don't want things not to sell. So it's just an interesting dynamic. And other pieces, that they're going to sell themselves. You don't have to worry. It's autopilot. You just bring it up to market. It's a desirable piece, a hot artist at that time. Rock and roll.
So I have to ask you another question.
Yeah.
You ever wake up in the morning, look in the mirror while you're getting ready, and say to yourself, why am I an auctioneer? Why am I in this? Because you think of all the things that people can do in life.
Yeah.
It's a really fascinating, interesting, but very small demographic of people who are doing what you do, who've gone in that direction.
Yeah.
But you're touching history almost every other day, probably. You're meeting so many unique, different people every day. It's a fascinating career and job.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I ask myself, how did I get here? But I do acknowledge, if I strictly was in the auction business, would I enjoy it as much as I do?
Right.
Now, granted, I mentioned I'm a gemologist. I'm in the jewelry business. I'm in the real estate business. We do trade shows, and I go travel, and we set up our booths.
Right.
And all of those things touch on one another. But if it was just one facet full time, I like to be moving and grooving and doing things. Now, I love what I do, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But also, you remember when I renovated our house, I was extremely involved in that too. So I love anything that's creating something,
right,
or resurrecting something.
Yeah, you have a very entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you. And it was just great because I know if I ever had to clock in at 9 to 5 behind a computer, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it. If I had to do it, obviously, but I couldn't do it. So the auction days, one day I can be going at the auction gallery. Someone can walk in and see a historic item. I'm like, oh my God. Or someone can call us in a need for a influx financially, and we go in. It's like a noble thing. We're helping someone, and we're helping ourselves too. It's a for-profit business. So it's nice to know that it's not just, okay, you're in the auction business, you take stuff and you resell it, because it's so much more complex. And even when people ask, what do you do? I stumble, how do I answer that? It's like, I sell stuff. I don't know.
Diversified.
Yeah, and it's like, because
you say you're an auctioneer. I think that's a fascinating thing to say.
Yeah, it is. But like yesterday, I was at the jewelry store all day. Didn't really touch base on the auction business.
Right.
So I personally do float around, but the auction business has a full-time staff of specialist cataloging, researching things. We have a packing department, we have a curator, we have a gallery assistant, we have gallery hands. It's awesome. And you go there, there's forklifts moving, there's racks, there's stuff going. It's cool to see things moving.
And where is this, in Lake Worth?
Lake Worth, 500 North Dixie. Yeah, in Lake Worth. And the auction house is Market Auctions, and the website's marketauctions.com. Now, the jewelry stores, we have West Palm Beach, Jupiter, Naples, Fort Myers, and Wellington. So 6 brick and mortar stores.
So 2 on the West Coast.
2 on the West Coast, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And again, full service. Each store has, about a dozen people. It's about 70 plus employees in the jewelry business at this time. And then the show company hosts trade shows. We'll actually rent out an entire show convention center, sublease all the booth space, which again is great because now Provident Jewelry is exhibiting, Market Auctions is exhibiting,
together, right.
Palm Beach Design Showroom's exhibiting, Provident Realty is exhibiting. So we have all of these different businesses under the same roof of one business that we're doing for a show.
Right.
So it's been very cool to tie all of this together. So yeah, it's fun.
And I feel like, we talk on this show, we like to bring up social media and how like you as a person are building your own brand through social media. And I feel like the brands that you guys are building also take such a precedence over social media. How do you use that to your advantage regularly?
Well, just like that Tekashi auction.
Yeah.
It took one famous rapper to reshare that auction for that to go absolutely viral. I mean,
really?
viral, to the point me and our support team
Couldn't.
Our website actually crashed the first night with bid influx. We were at 2 in the morning trying to stabilize our auction, which I joke was getting away from us because of the bids and the registrations and all this stuff. So 2 in the morning when the auction
You're all
opened,
still awake.
we're all still awake, just trying to contain this. And social media helped that auction achieve what it did. Now, with social media, your reach is just not micro anymore. I mean, not even just the auction house, but the jewelry business. The 6 stores, as I mentioned, those brands, but we deal in, antique deco Cartier pieces and David Webb and like the best of the best that you'll never find.
So
oh my goodness,
hot right
it's
now
so hot,
too.
and the enamel work that they do, it's just great. So we have those pieces, and you know what? Not a lot of people are knowing that stuff. So if we put it on social media and we did a beautiful story, we can get a hit from overseas. Oh my God, look at that azure malachite ram's head bangle bracelet by David Webb, which most people that know that drool over that.
Wow.
So it's helped. And our e-commerce site at providentjewelry.com, which was recently relaunched, shows a lot of our pieces, and that's just been gangbusters since it's gone live. And that took a long time to get it going.
I would think so. Everything has to be photographed
Oh, yeah.
and all of it.
But it's funny
up.
because like you look at the antique business, the auction business, and the jewelry business, a lot of them are still old school. You know, handwritten receipts. Yeah. I don't need an inventory management system. I don't need a website. So with this new mainstream where everything is on social media, it's imperative to make your presence known. And you know, if you're not growing, you're dying. So you need to always be thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what is ahead?
Well, you know, in the auction business, like we talked about handbags, you know, we're always looking to grow the auction business, do curated sales, do more sales, more product. We've talked about opening a second location on the West Coast, just for influx, because we have a lot of deals that come out of Naples, Sarasota, the Gulf Coast over there. So we have a lot of different things there. We're actually working on our own proprietary inventory software just to be ahead of the game on the auction house. The jewelry store is always looking ahead, hiring on good staff, hiring, like I mentioned, gemologists, the best benchmen to manufacture set stones, best watchmakers, which that is a dying art, watchmaking in general. So which we'll talk about. That's actually, let's pause. So watchmaking, like a cobbler or like a true tradesman, that doesn't exist like it once did. You know?
Really?
So to
the
have
complicated movements?
Totally. And also, again, going back to our historic preservation credo that Provident Jewelry and Market Auctions has, we deal in antique estate pieces.
So where is a person learning or getting educated to be able to fix a fine watch?
There's still watchmaking schools out there, there is.
So
and
crazy
believe
to
it or not,
think
there's a
about.
shortage of watchmakers in the world.
I could imagine.
But you really need to have trade experience. You know, even me, when I became a gemologist, I got out of gem school. I didn't know the value of stones. I knew what I was looking at.
Right.
And from there, I could help try to develop value. Right. But it's hands-on experience, time and working on pieces. And if I'm showing a watchmaker an open-face pocket watch, railroad watch from the 1880s, most modern watchmakers would scratch your head and say, what is this? I don't know how to work with this. So you got to have the right guys, and you got to know what the right guy is for the right piece. And going back to collecting, I personally collect pocket watches. And it's a harder thing if I ever want something serviced to know who I can trust for that specific complication on an antique 100-plus-year-old item. It's a multi-tiered thing.
So is there people in the United States that are like schools here in the U.S.? I always felt like it's not done here in the United States. Yeah.
There is watchmaking schools in the U.S. I believe there's actually one in Miami and one in New York. But a lot of the watchmakers, they go over to Switzerland.
Right, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
I mean, and how does like a watch become, like, I feel like there's cycles, I guess. I mean, it's on trend. They change. And, you know.
It is trend. I mean, women are wearing, by historic standards, men's watches today.
Yes.
You know, women are wearing very large face watches.
Yes.
Where men used to wear what women wear today as a watch, and women would wear a much more smaller or mid-sized watch. And then even, you know, vintage men's pieces were very thin, very small. And for the longest time, these watches kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're kind of seeing a little bit of a reset on that, where women are going back to a mid-size, and men are going from a 44 millimeter to a 40, or back to a 39 or a 36, which has been a Rolex Presidential since the beginning of time. True iconic creme de la creme Rolex Presidential 36 millimeter. Today they're not. They're 40, 41.
Really?
Yeah. So it's nice to have that tailoring back a little bit. Market trends, pearl necklaces. Not a lot of people, and I see you're wearing pearl earrings. I think that
pearls.
As a woman, it's feminine, it's sexy. I think pearls are something every lady should have.
Yeah.
I will bet you will not bump into anyone else this week really wearing a pearl on. It's just, you know, it's the market. You look at like fur coats.
So it's a whole nother item.
Whole other item that we come across at the auction, which, you know, that's an interesting thing because we're in, you know, Palm Beach, Florida. Right. You know, is there a big need for a for a sable coat? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's funny you say that because I was randomly just thinking the other day, when I first moved to Florida, I had my grandmother's fur coat, and it was kind of old school style or what have you. Or I shouldn't say when I first moved to Florida, but I had this, and as a teenager, I was like, I would love to. It's beautiful. It's like a white mink. There was a furry on Palmetto Park Road.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And it's like so crazy. Like, that's not around anymore. Like, just the art of like the people who really did care and had a craft or a trade is diminishing.
Back to watchmaking, back to,
there's
being
so
a
many
cobbler
different
and
industries.
things. So,
Just from the interior design industry, it's.
Oh, I'm sure
There's a lot of
woodworking
crafts
and like marble carving, stuff like
Correct.
that.
So
I mean,
difficult.
Yeah.
So difficult. And even with marble carving, I mean, you can't get the same out of non-real stone from, the earth, but I do believe it's coming back.
Yeah.
I feel like the finer things, people always still
Gravitate back. Yeah.
But I do feel like it's our duty to keep it forefront and continue to
keep the spark lit.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, like I saw in your studio, there was that one kitchen, and I was like, wow, what a tribute to like deco with the bronze and the browns. And I was like, that looks like a yacht meets Miami in the 80s. I'm like, that is killer.
Well, and those are the things that you don't walk in and be like, oh, that was done in 2020 or oh, that was done in 2019. And that's that eclectic backdrop that I really do gravitate to.
Sure.
I do.
Yeah. Like I said, it goes back to trends and what people are digging, and I still think, and I still talk about just the interactions you, me, and Madison had during our renovation. It was really just funny and entertaining. Or anything, Tiffany, look at this. No. Madison, ew, no. Put it in storage. No.
We got a few in there.
We did get a few in there. I got my trunk in the bedroom that I wanted, which I like that.
And those have had
what kind of trunk?
I have a large Louis Vuitton wardrobe trunk. Again, a historic piece. That thing could have come over on a transatlantic cruise at one time, for all I know.
And it's such an interesting size too.
Is it ours or?
It's tall.
It opens
and
up
narrow.
like this way versus like a top opening.
Yeah.
It's
I was in the 90s. I was in Ohio in this little town shooting a television show. And I went to lunch with a bunch of the guys. And next door to the little deli or diner that we were eating was the store with like just crap in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked in the window and they had this big, gigantic Louis Vuitton trunk.
That's
big.
awesome.
And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I went inside and I asked him how much was it. And it was like $999. He's like, no, $99. $99.
I mean, did you ever have it evaluated?
No, I was like, I said, okay, great.
No, but
I paid the guy.
Stuff that's valuable today.
I gave the guy like a $100 bill, and he was like, well, there's tax, and I gave him whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, how am I taking this home? I said, can you ship this? And he's like, yeah, we can do that for you. I said, I'll come back later this afternoon because he didn't know how much it would be. And I go back, and it was like $500 some
yeah.
to ship it back. And I'm like, $500 some dollars for $99 truck.
Yeah.
And one of the guys who was with me said, hey, you already bought it. It's worth something.
Yeah.
So I paid it, and sure enough, a week later, it comes, And then it sat in my house forever. And then Tiffany and I got married, and one day we opened it up.
Yeah.
And it's in mint condition inside, 1903, and on the
that's awesome.
And on the side of it has like a people's name, like
the old labels and stuff.
A family's
name.
name.
Monogram.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
But it's and we for years now have just put all of our ski stuff in it because it has the trays that come out. But we had a guy who was like, I remember the guy. He was an auction guy. He probably I can't remember his name, but you probably know of him. But he was like, it's worth a lot of money.
Those are worth money.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have in our upcoming August sale about 8 or 10 Louis Vuitton luggage items, ranging from giant ladies' hat holders to some luggage.
Those would be
he was telling us it's worth upwards of $20,000.
Yeah, could be.
Because he wanted to you got to sell this. You got to sell. Like, I have no.
But that goes back to trends. I mean, years ago, these weren't as hot as they are
weren't.
today. And the
Correct.
advent of social media and all of the auctions being live, you see what they're bringing now.
But it's like a piece of junk that that the guy in the store probably thought.
Yeah.
But for $99, he didn't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I didn't know.
Well, you go to the Louis Vuitton store in Boca, they have a trunk in there for display, but you can buy it. And I just, out of curiosity, I'm like, how much is this thing? It's a 6-figure piece. 6 figures. I'm like, whoa, I have one. You want to pay me half that? You can have it. Like
6 figures.
6 figures for all of the. I mean, this has every trunk, every drawer. You click a button, a mirror pops out.
But
this is the same. And the one we have is
it's not like
No, but it
He's
has
talking
a
about
beautiful.
modern one.
Well, no. Okay, it's not modern. It's from 1903.
Yeah.
But it's in mint condition.
They're valuable.
It's
They
like
are valuable.
perfect, beautiful condition.
Yeah.
It sits underneath our baby grand piano in the house.
But again, going back to what you said earlier, that piece has a story.
Correct.
And you remember it's a curated item
Yeah.
that you brought into your house to curate your own, museum, if you will.
Right.
Yep.
Everything has a story.
Yeah.
And there's a story in people allowing and saying, Tiffany, we trust you. Do what you need to do. That's a story in itself also.
Oh, everyone. And they all
Yeah.
mean so much to me.
Yeah.
It's like every project, they're all different. And I love that too, that they're all end users. They're not all like, they're perfect for the people who live there. They're not like model houses that,
Yeah.
they all have a story.
So we appreciate you coming in and
No,
spending some
thank you
time
guys.
with us.
Yeah.
You need to keep us up to date on when your next auction is that's alive, because we want to attend.
I will let you guys know the next live
Absolutely.
sale.
We'll bring a couple of other friends.
we'll
and a
make
couple
it
other
a date.
couples.
Yeah.
No, we'll make it a fun night.
Yeah, no, it is
Yeah.
fun. We always enjoy. We have typically monthly sales. Our July sale is a inventory closeout sale. We're just cleaning out the warehouse. It's about 400 items. I think we're starting everything at like $5. Just
I
whatever.
should come with the
Just
girl.
$5.
Let it all go. Just whatever you guys want to bid on, do it. That's online only, but because we have it in a couple different warehouses. But we're just moving stuff. We take it. We need the space for season.
Right.
August is where we're having that Louis Vuitton and a bunch of other stuff. But September, October, maybe November is when we'll do that live sale. But yeah, I'd love to have you guys. It'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll bring a couple
We'll
couples.
do it.
and-
Well,
Yeah,
thank
make
you,
it fun night.
Jacob.
Thank you guys. This
Yeah,
was fun.
appreciate it. Good
was cool.
story.
Great
stuff.
story. Thanks for watching and listening to iDesign Lab.
iDesign Labs podcast is an SW Group production in association with the 5-Star and TW Interiors. To learn more about iDesign Lab or TW Interiors, please visit twinteriors.com.